The phenomenon of a man fearing the depth of his own feelings is a complex psychological paradox. On the surface, it may appear as coldness, detachment, or a sudden pulling away just when things seem to be going perfectly. However, beneath that stoic or hesitant exterior often lies an intense emotional reservoir that he simply hasn't been equipped to manage. For many men, the realization that they care deeply for someone feels less like a romantic victory and more like a profound loss of control. To understand how to handle this, one must first understand the scarcity mindset regarding vulnerability that many men are raised with. From a young age, emotional stoicism is often equated with strength, while deep attachment is framed as a vulnerability that can be used against them. Consequently, when a man finds himself falling, his internal alarm system, the amygdala, triggers a fight-or-flight response. He isn't necessarily running away from you. He is running away from the perceived threat of emotional overwhelm. This creates a delicate dance for the partner. You are tasked with being both a source of warmth and a symbol of stability, all while navigating a minefield of emotional triggers that you didn't create. It requires a high degree of emotional intelligence to recognize that his distance is often a defense mechanism rather than a lack of interest. If you push too hard for an admission of feelings, you validate his fear that the relationship is a source of pressure. If you pull away in frustration, you validate his fear that deep care only leads to abandonment. Handling a man in this state is not about fixing him or playing the role of a therapist. It is about creating an environment where the cost of his vulnerability is lowered to a point where he feels safe enough to invest. The following 15 strategies are designed to bridge this gap. They focus on the subtle art of low-pressure intimacy, a way of being present that honors the connection without suffocating the individual. By prioritizing consistency, maintaining your own independence, and mastering the nuances of nonverbal communication, you provide a blueprint for a relationship that feels like a sanctuary rather than a cage. The goal is to move from a state of emotional friction to one of emotional flow, where he eventually realizes that the person he cares for so deeply is not a threat to his autonomy, but the greatest addition to it. It is a journey of patience, but for the right person, the reward is a bond that is exceptionally resilient because it was built on a foundation of proven safety and mutual respect. 1. Prioritize consistency over intensity. When a man is scared of his feelings, intensity feels like a tidal wave. While romantic movies celebrate grand gestures and sudden declarations of love, for someone fearing their own depth of emotion, these things can trigger a fight-or-flight response. They see intensity as a sign that things are moving too fast and that they are losing their footing. Consistency, however, is the antidote to that fear. Consistency acts as a stabilizer. It means showing up when you say you will, maintaining a steady temperament, and ensuring your actions match your words over a long period. When you are consistent, you provide a predictable environment. For a man who is internally panicking because his feelings are unpredictable, your external stability becomes a grounded wire. He needs to know that even if his world feels like it's spinning because of his feelings for you, you are a constant he can rely on. Over time, this consistency builds a track record of safety. It shifts the focus from the scary peak of high-intensity emotions to the solid ground of a reliable partnership. You aren't asking him to jump off a cliff with you. You are inviting him to walk a steady path. This approach allows him to habituate to the relationship. Eventually, he realizes that caring deeply doesn't have to mean living in a state of constant emotional upheaval. It can simply mean having a reliable partner by his side. 2. Create a judgment-free safe space. A man who fears his feelings often associates those feelings with weakness or lack of masculinity. Society often teaches men to bottle up and man up, leading them to view deep care as a liability. To handle this, you must cultivate an environment where he feels he can be imperfectly human without being judged, mocked, or analyzed like a lab rat. Creating a safe space means reacting with calm curiosity rather than criticism when he does choose to open up. If he admits he missed you or felt a pang of jealousy, and you respond with, "Aha, I knew you cared," or "Why are you being so sensitive?" you effectively shut down the gates. Instead, a judgment-free zone involves acknowledging his feelings as valid facts. It requires active listening, where you hear what he's saying without immediately trying to fix it or use it as emotional leverage later. Furthermore, a safe space is built in the boring moments. It's about how you handle his mistakes or his bad days. If he sees that you don't withdraw your affection when he is grumpy or stressed, he starts to trust that his inner self, the part of him that cares deeply, won't be rejected if it's ever fully exposed. You are essentially proving to him that his emotions are not a burden to you, which in turn makes them feel like less of a burden to him. 3. Avoid pressuring for immediate labels. Labels like boyfriend, soulmate, or forever carry immense weight. To a man who is already terrified by the sheer volume of his internal affection, these labels can feel like a legal contract he isn't ready to sign. He might feel the connection, but the definition of the connection creates a sense of no escape. When you pressure for labels too early, you move the focus from the feeling, which is good, to the commitment, which is scary. By avoiding the "what are we" talk prematurely, you allow the relationship to develop organically. This doesn't mean you should settle for a situation that doesn't meet your needs, but rather that you focus on the quality of the connection rather than the title of it. Let the bond grow so strong that the label becomes a natural byproduct rather than a forced requirement. When you remove the pressure of labels, you give him the illusion of freedom. This isn't about letting him be non-committal, but about letting him choose you every day because he wants to, not because he's obligated to buy a title. Often, when the pressure to define everything is removed, a man will actually lean in closer. He stops looking for the exit sign because he no longer feels like he's being pushed into a room against his will. You are giving his heart time to catch up with his head. 4. Master the art of low-pressure quality time. When a man is overwhelmed by his feelings, heavy dates, like long, candlelit dinners where you stare into each other's eyes for 3 hours, can feel like an interrogation. He knows he cares, he knows you know, and the silence of a formal setting can make him feel like he's expected to deliver a profound emotional performance. Low-pressure quality time involves side-by-side activities rather than face-to-face ones. Engaging in activities like hiking, playing a video game, cooking a meal together, or even driving allows for parallel play. When you are both focused on a task, the emotional tension is diffused. It allows for organic conversation to flow without the weight of expectation. In these moments, he can enjoy your company without feeling like he has to manage the fact that he's falling for you. It builds a history of positive, easy memories. These memories act as a buffer against his fear. He begins to associate being with you not with emotional work, but with ease. The more easy time he spends with you, the more he realizes that caring for you doesn't have to be a complicated, frightening ordeal. It can just be a fun Tuesday afternoon. This builds the friendship pillar of the relationship, which is often the most durable part. 5. Validate his emotions without overwhelming him. Validation is a delicate balance. When he does show a glimmer of how much he cares, perhaps through a small compliment or protective gesture, you want to acknowledge it without making a big deal out of it. If you throw a party every time he shows emotion, he will retreat because the spotlight is too bright. Validation should be subtle. If he says, "I really worried about you when you didn't text back," a high-pressure response would be, "Oh my God, you really do love me. See, I told you." A low-pressure, validating response would be, "I appreciate you looking out for me. That feels really nice." You are acknowledging the emotion, labeling it as positive, and then moving on. This technique is called positive reinforcement. You are teaching him that expressing care results in a warm, pleasant interaction rather than an emotional confrontation. You are normalizing the care. By not overreacting, you show him that deep feelings are a normal, healthy part of a relationship, not some emergency that needs to be analyzed. You are essentially demystifying his own feelings for him. When he sees that you can handle his care with grace and composure, he starts to believe that he can handle it, too. 6. Focus on nonverbal reassurance. For a man who is intimidated by the weight of his feelings, words can often feel heavy, clumsy, or like a trap. He might struggle to say, "I love you" or "I really value you" because those phrases carry a historical weight of commitment and vulnerability that he isn't ready to face yet. This is where nonverbal communication becomes your most powerful tool. It allows you to communicate safety, warmth, and belonging without the noise of a direct emotional confrontation. Nonverbal reassurance includes things like a hand on his shoulder while he's stressed, a genuine smile when he walks into the room, or maintaining comfortable eye contact that says, "I see you," without demanding he say something back. These gestures act as a soft landing for his anxiety. If he is internally spiraling, wondering if he's too deep into this relationship, a simple, non-demanding physical touch can ground him in the present moment. It tells his nervous system that there is no immediate threat. Furthermore, your body language should signal openness. If you are constantly cross-armed or looking at your phone, he might interpret that as a sign that his feelings are misplaced or that you are withdrawing. By staying physically present and affectionate in a casual way, like leaning into him while watching a movie, you provide the intimacy he craves but fears. You are feeding the connection without making him talk about the connection. Over time, these nonverbal cues build a subconscious layer of trust that makes the eventual verbal expressions feel much less daunting. 7. Maintain your own independent life. One of the biggest fears a man has when he realizes he cares deeply is the fear of losing himself. Always, the fear that you will become his entire world, making the stakes of losing you unbearable. If he sees that your entire happiness depends on his every text or mood, the pressure becomes suffocating. By maintaining a vibrant, independent life, you show him that while you want him, you do not need him to function. This paradoxically makes it safer for him to care. When you have your own hobbies, friendships, and career goals, you project a sense of emotional self-sufficiency. This is incredibly attractive to someone who is afraid of the enmeshment that often comes with deep feelings. It proves to him that the relationship is a partnership of two whole individuals, not two halves desperately clinging to each other. When you go out with your friends or spend a Saturday pursuing a solo project, you are giving him the gift of missing you. This space allows him to process his feelings in your absence, which is often when a man realizes just how much he actually cares. Moreover, having your own life prevents you from becoming hyper-focused on his emotional progress. If you are busy with your own world, you won't be sitting around analyzing why he hasn't opened up yet. Your independence acts as a model for him. It shows him that one can care deeply about a partner while still remaining a sovereign individual. It lowers the stakes of the relationship, making the emotional investment feel like a beautiful addition to his life rather than a total takeover of it. 8. Communicate boundaries with kindness. A common mistake when dealing with a fearful man is to become a doormat in hopes that being extra nice will make him feel safe. However, a lack of boundaries actually creates more anxiety. A man who fears his feelings often fears the chaos of a relationship. If you don't have boundaries, the relationship feels unpredictable and boundless, which is terrifying to someone trying to maintain control. Communicating clear boundaries with kindness provides a map for the relationship. Boundaries are not ultimatums. They are guidelines for how to love you. For example, if he withdraws for 3 days because he's overwhelmed, a kind boundary would be, "I understand you need space to decompress, and I want you to have that. However, I feel anxious when I don't hear from you at all. Could you just send a quick text letting me know you're taking some me time?" This isn't an attack. It's a request for a system that works for both of you. It shows him that you respect yourself, which in turn makes him respect you more. When you hold your boundaries, you demonstrate that you are a stable person who won't be toppled over by his emotional fluctuations. This stability is incredibly comforting. He realizes that even if he loses it or gets scared, you have the structural integrity to keep the relationship on track. This reduces his fear of breaking the relationship or hurting you accidentally. He learns that the walls of the relationship are firm but flexible, providing a structured environment where his feelings can finally sit still. 9. Give him physical and mental space to process. When a man realizes he cares more than he intended to, his first instinct is often to retreat to the cave. This is a biological and psychological response to feeling overwhelmed. To you, it might look like he's pulling away or going cold, but to him, it's a necessary recalibration. If you chase him during this period, by calling more, asking what's wrong, or demanding more time. You will only confirm his fear that the relationship is a trap that consumes his freedom. Giving space is an act of profound trust. It says, I trust that what we have is strong enough to survive a few days of silence. When he pulls back, let him. Don't fill that space with your own anxiety. Instead, use that time to focus on yourself. See heading 7. When he realizes that pulling back doesn't result in a fight or a guilt trip, he will feel much safer coming back. You are teaching him that he can come and go emotionally without the relationship collapsing. This elasticity is crucial. Think of the relationship like a rubber band. If you stay too close, there's no tension and no growth. But if you pull too hard, it snaps. By giving him mental space, you allow him to miss the comfort and connection you provide. Usually, in that space, he will realize that being away from you is actually harder than facing his fear of caring for you. He needs to reach that conclusion on his own, without you whispering it in his ear. The more you allow him his space, the more he will voluntarily choose to spend his time in your space. 10. Acknowledge small acts of vulnerability. Vulnerability for a fearful man doesn't look like a 3-page love letter. It looks like him sharing a story about a failure at work, admitting he's tired, or buying you your favorite snack without you asking. These are his bids for connection. Because he is afraid of the big feelings, he will test the waters with small ones. If these small acts go unnoticed or unmocked, he will likely never move on to the big ones. Acknowledging these acts requires a light touch. You don't need to make a grand announcement. If he tells you something personal, simply say, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. It helps me understand you better. Then, move the conversation forward naturally. You are providing a micro-reward for his bravery. You are signaling that it is safe to reveal the parts of himself that aren't perfectly polished. Over time, these small acknowledgments build an evidence folder in his mind. He starts to see a pattern. When I am vulnerable with her, nothing bad happens. I don't get laughed at. I don't get pressured. I just get accepted. This slowly erodes the fear part of the equation and strengthens the care part. You are essentially training his brain to associate vulnerability with peace rather than peril. By validating the small things, you pave the way for him to eventually feel comfortable with the big reality of how much he truly cares for you. 11. Avoid overanalyzing his every move. When a man is terrified of how much he cares, his behavior can become a confusing map of contradictions. One day he is incredibly affectionate, and the next, he might seem distant or hyper-focused on work. If you fall into the trap of overanalyzing every text, every sigh, or every minute of silence, you create an environment of emotional surveillance. This constant scrutiny is something a fearful man can sense intuitively, and it makes him feel like he is under a microscope, which only increases his desire to hide his true feelings. Overanalysis usually stems from your own anxiety, but it acts as a mirror that reflects his fear back at him. If you are constantly asking, what did you mean by that? Or why did your tone change? You are forcing him to provide logical explanations for feelings he hasn't even paused for himself yet. Often, he doesn't know why he's being distant. He's just reacting to an internal alarm that says he's getting too close. By letting the small things slide, you demonstrate a level of emotional maturity that proves you aren't going to be triggered by his temporary fluctuations. Mastering the art of taking things at face value is a superpower here. If he says he's tired, believe he's tired. If he's quiet, assume he's thinking. By refusing to dig for hidden meanings, you create a relaxed atmosphere where he doesn't have to be on guard. This lack of scrutiny allows him to let his guard down naturally. When he realizes you aren't trying to solve him or catch him in a moment of vulnerability, he will eventually stop trying to hide. Your calmness becomes the vacuum that pulls his honesty out into the open, because there is finally enough room for it to exist without being dissected. 12. Be patient with his emotional pace. We live in a world of instant everything, but emotional processing, especially for someone who views caring as a risk, follows its own prehistoric clock. You might be ready for the I love you in month 3, while he might still be grappling with the fact that he actually enjoys spending every weekend with you. If you try to drag him at your pace, you will likely pull him right out of the relationship. Patience is not just waiting. It is active waiting with a positive attitude. Being patient means acknowledging that his slow pace is not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of his internal hurdles. It's like watching someone walk through deep snow. They want to get to the destination, but every step requires a massive amount of effort. If you are already at the finish line shouting for him to hurry up, he might just sit down in the snow out of exhaustion. Instead, stay just a few steps ahead, showing him the path is clear, but allowing him to take the time he needs to plant his feet firmly. This patience also prevents emotional burnout for you. If you accept that this is a marathon and not a sprint, you stop wasting energy on frustration. You begin to appreciate the incremental wins. The first time he plans a trip a month in advance, or the first time he mentions a future event. These are his versions of grand declarations. When you respect his pace, you show him that you are a partner who understands his unique rhythm. This builds a profound sense of being known, which is the very thing a fearful man needs to realize, that caring for you is the safest thing he can do. 13. Lead by example with your own openness. You cannot ask a man to be vulnerable if you are operating from behind a shield yourself. Often, in an attempt to protect ourselves from a man who is hot and cold, we shut down our own emotional expression. We think, I won't tell him how I feel until he tells me. This creates a stalemate where both parties are waiting for the other to drop their guard first. To break the cycle, you must be the one to model what healthy, low-stakes openness looks like. Leading by example doesn't mean dumping all your deepest fears and intense love on him at once. It means being transparent about your daily emotions. If you're feeling happy, say so. If something made you sad at work, share it. When you express your feelings in a matter-of-fact, non-dramatic way, you are teaching him a new language. You are showing him that emotions are just data. They aren't monsters that destroy your life. You are normalizing the act of being seen. When he sees you being open and remaining okay, it demystifies the process for him. He learns that he doesn't have to be a stoic rock to be respected. Your openness acts as an invitation rather than a demand. It's the difference between saying, "Tell me your secrets," a demand, and saying, "I felt really vulnerable today when X happened," an invitation. By being the first to step into the light, you show him that the light isn't burning. It's actually quite warm. This reduces the perceived cost of his own care, making it easier for him to follow your lead. 14. Focus on building a strong friendship foundation. The romance and passion of a relationship are often what scare a man who fears his care, because passion is volatile and unpredictable. Friendship, however, feels stable, logical, and safe. If you pivot your focus toward being his best friend rather than just his romantic partner, you bypass many of his defensive triggers. A man might be afraid of a girlfriend who has claims on his heart, but he is rarely afraid of a friend who has his back. A strong friendship involves shared interests, inside jokes, and a genuine enjoyment of each other's personalities outside of the bedroom or the dating context. When the friendship is the primary structure, the caring part feels like a natural extension of that bond rather than a frightening new entity. Think of it as smuggling the love in through the back door of friendship. When he realizes he tells you things he doesn't tell anyone else, or that you're the first person he wants to call with good news, he's already caring deeply. He just hasn't labeled it as scary romance yet. Focusing on friendship also ensures that the relationship has staying power. If the romantic fear causes him to temporarily bolt or withdraw, the friendship acts as the safety net that keeps you connected. It's much easier to reconnect with a friend than it is to restart a heavy romantic engine. By prioritizing the us against the world friendship dynamic, you give him a role he knows how to play. Once he's comfortable in the role of your best friend, the realization that he also deeply loves you becomes a much smaller, less intimidating leap to take. 15. Know when to protect your own heart. While patience and understanding are vital, they must not come at the cost of your own soul. Handling a man who fears his feelings is an investment, but every investment needs a stop-loss order. If you spend months or years holding space for someone who refuses to do the internal work to meet you halfway, you risk becoming a waiting room rather than a partner. You must have a clear internal understanding of what your own limit is. Knowing when to protect your heart means recognizing the difference between fear and unwillingness. A man who is afraid will still show signs of growth, even if they are microscopic. He will try. He will return after he pulls away, and he will appreciate your patience. A man who is unwilling will use his fear as an excuse to keep you at arm's length while reaping all the benefits of your care without giving anything back. You are a partner, not a therapist. If the relationship is consistently one-sided and your needs for affection and security are being perpetually ignored, protecting your heart might mean walking away. Setting this internal boundary actually makes you more attractive and grounded. When you know you are willing to leave if you aren't treated with the depth of care you deserve, you carry yourself with a quiet power. He will sense that you aren't desperate for his care, but that you deserve it. This creates a healthy level of urgency for him. If he truly cares, and his fear is what's holding him back, the realization that he might lose a high-value woman like you will often be the jolt he needs to finally face his fears and commit to the depth of his feelings.